here's my thought on Den Speaks. We have incredibly talented people in this room, and there are times when we need to get that out for everybody, and not just here. So why not have a place where we can have Den created, Den approved, passionate presentations, 5 minutes long, that can go anywhere we get together. That's Den Speaks. So this is the official opening of Den Speaks that after this week goes with all of you to any place you gather with your Den family. So if you're hosting a Den-a-palooza, put it in your schedule. If you're going to a conference that Den is going to be at, let's get some of this scheduled there. If you're just doing a thing at your school, throw some Den Speaks in there. So this week, you're going to hear from a number of us who have put together our passionate presentations on all different kinds of topics, some with visuals, some without. So it's a whole different way for us to have a moment or 5 moments, 5 liberal minutes at times, but 5 minutes to share what's passionate to us with you. Because what do we do so well with each other? We connect. This is just a different way to do that. So if you'll indulge me, here's my 5 minutes, and this is my Den Speaks. I had great teachers growing up. Teachers who did things that today have fancy names attached to what we do. But back then, they just did what was right. These were teachers who would go out of their way for every single student, every single day, and not think twice about it. In junior high school, now there's a date for you, right? In junior high school, our school was open almost every Friday night so we could go and play basketball, go swimming, play ping pong, play board games, whatever. 2 math teachers, Mr. Reben and Mr. Rella. These guys were fixtures on the basketball court. It didn't matter if you were a great player, if you were a lousy player, they were there to coach you, strategize, ref the games. Didn't matter. What was really special about these guys was what happened after Friday night. They followed every single kid that they came in contact with throughout the rest of the week. If you had trouble with math, science, reading, didn't matter. They'd track you down, they'd find you, they'd drag you into their classrooms kicking and screaming, and they'd make sure you get it. And you didn't have to be on their roster to get it. So this whole notion of putting up fancy posters about it takes a village that we hang in our rooms, that was happening way before they even made it to the press. Duke Shermer, Duke as he called because he was a rebel. He hated the official title of Mr. Shermer. Duke Shermer taught creative writing in my high school. He was so much of a rebel that he was a coffee-chugging, chain-smoking, you name it kind of teacher who wore the same outfit every single day. And you had to have the windows of his room open every day because, well, we needed to breathe. He was so much of a rebel, there were things about education he just didn't believe in other than the fact that we needed to be creative. One of the things he really despised was grades, so he didn't give them. He left that to us. Great idea, right? You let a high school teacher grade themselves? Here was a caveat. If you really wanted that A, you had to prove it. And you had to prove it in writing. You had to reflect on what you did in his class during that grading period and prove to him that you deserve that A. No problem. Except that you'd hand him the paper. He'd read it. So while chugging and puffing along through the class, he'd stroll around, he'd walk up to the desk of the student who just handed the paper, and depending upon his mood, one of 2 things would happen. Either he would just fling it back onto your desk and say, yeah, you got it. Or, which was more likely the case, he would take it, crumble it up, throw it back at that student's face, which would then be followed by a tirade of 4-letter words not appropriate for this family program, and then say, now do it again. Very much in that tone. So imagine a class of high school students, and he was the only guy who taught creative writing. So whether you were the jock or the geek, or the nerd or the bohemian, the class was just like this, silent. But as soon as you heard the now do it again, that meant you still had a shot. Now, we're in this mode of students self-reflecting and monitoring their own behavior and their grades and being accountable. He just told us to do it again because it wasn't good enough. Imagine that. That really sent a message to all of us. Then, in the fall of 1980, I started my sophomore year of high school. And chemistry. My chemistry teacher, Miss Darwin. I'm still trying to figure out why there was a Darwin in a chemistry class. Anyway, she started our class like this. You need to do one thing this year. If you do this, you'll be all set for life. What a hook, right? If you listen to everything I say, write down every single word, by the end of the year, you'll be able to build your own nitrogen bomb. We thought you said hydrogen. We were all set. Didn't really work out that well, but what did work out really well was the fact that she was an expert at balancing those really obnoxious chemical equations. And she had this room with 6 blackboards. So one day we walked in and they were covered with chemical equations. The same chemical equation, using every color chalk imaginable in creation in 1980. And she said, here's this chemical equation, and this is how you do it. And then she said, there's 6 models. I don't know you that well yet. I'm not sure how you're going to learn this stuff. I don't know when you're going to learn this stuff. But what I do know is that you have 6 models to choose from, so based on how you learn best, you pick the model that's going to work for you. So before that word differentiation came into play, she was already setting the stage for every student in her class to learn how to balance equations in the way that worked best for them. Then there was Mr. Gill, my math teacher. He was the kind of guy, really low-key. If you wanted to answer a question in his class, you had to stand up and say, yes, sir. No, sir. Thank you, sir. And he was never in the military. But he believed in being completely precise in everything you did. So much so that when he gave an exam and you got down to near the bottom or the end of that equation, and you know, we all have been there, you skip those last 2 steps, but you still solve it, and then you go to the proof and you prove that your solution is correct, he'd mark you completely wrong. It's right. Here's the solution, and here's the proof. His answer? There's no shortcut to a great education. So those are the kind of teachers that I had growing up. And see, I look out in this room, and I see all those teachers here. I see a room of great teachers. I see a room of core teachers who would do all of that and so much more for your kids. I see a core group of teachers who will go back when this week is over and turn education upside down and make it a thing of beauty across the globe. I see a core group of teachers who will prove to people that this technology that sits in front of us is all about connection. It's about creation. It's about elaboration. It's about the forming of and researching of and proving of questions. And it is not for examinations. I see this core group of people who will bring their students to the very brink of their very, very best potential and not explain to them that this is potentially going to be on a test. I see a core group of people that will do whatever it takes for their kids. And we are that core group of people who, in 30 years, our students will come somewhere and talk about us just like I talked about my teachers. And the last thing about this core group of teachers that I see in front of me, and this is the most important thing of all, there is nothing common about any of us. Thank you.